Cool.
Welcome in, buddy.
Hi. Working up the courage to talk to you for a few days now, but I've enjoyed listening to you.
I get
So,
it. I get it. Thanks for
um,
thanks for watching, Wes. I assume you're a
mhm.
Christian?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, I'm a Christian, sort of old Earth creationist.
So you agree with like the Catholics and whatnot that the old Earth creationism is likely, and you probably are okay with evolution.
For the most part.
Okay, fair enough. I think that was kind of where I was as a Christian. I read a lot of books from the fundamentalists trying to combat evolution and young Earth, trying to put up young Earth creationism. Even as a Christian, I didn't find them very compelling books. But so I'm glad that like you're okay with science being science. So let's start out where we typically start out, which is what do you think is the most compelling evidence or argument for God?
um, I think I think probably arguments from design.
Hmm.
Um, are you familiar with like Stephen Meyer and intelligent design people?
Yeah, I mean, pretty familiar with the intelligent design arguments. Typically, like the most famous, people will go to like Paley's watchmaker analogy. That's a pretty typical one. I mean, I don't know which one you want to go to, but
Um, I'm personally drawn to the idea of, yeah, I mean, like the watchmaker, like teleological
mhm.
arguments, and uh, I like where like Stephen Meyer goes with his DNA being a code argument,
Mm.
extrapolating from that.
Okay, so the information argument, right? Personally, I think there's a couple problems with the DNA information argument.
Okay,
And I think my favorite way to deal with it may not be everyone's favorite way of dealing with it, but I write code for a living, right?
hmm,
So, for example, there's a couple like no-nos in coding. Like you want to write code that does everything you need it to do in the least amount of lines. That's
sure.
called efficiency. And
Hmm.
then the other thing is you don't want dead code, right? You don't want to write a bunch of code and then later realize you don't need it and then leave it in the program. That's all dead code, right?
Right.
When we look at our DNA, if it was designed, it looks like it was designed by a madman. We've got a ton of dead code and we've got a ton of inefficiencies. Which makes sense if it came about naturally, right? Because the universe doesn't have a goal in mind, right? It doesn't care
Hmm.
if DNA is wildly inefficient. It doesn't care about that at all, right? But if it was purposely designed by a creator, now we've got some questions to ask.
Sure. Like as far as, so you're saying there are parts that are not functional? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the percentage has been postulated by different scientists over time, like biologists. Um, I think currently they're suggesting, up to 70% of it is non-functional, and some of it's actually repetitive, which is interesting. But I think one of the biggest, I would say, if we're going to talk about
It is more like 99%.
oh, Ems is with, so Ems is a medical doctor, but you can't hear him.
Uh,
Unfortunately, I
but
can hear him.
the 99% is like, it is not in, like, it is not entirely junk. Some of it has been shown to act as just transcription factors and areas in which uh, for example, the DNA polymerase or the uh, transcriptase would bind into them, for example. But the vast majority of the 99% is non-coding and junk.
Okay. So my friend Ems, I apologize you can't hear him. I don't have enough technology to make you hear a guest on TikTok yet. Working on that. But he's a med doctor. He's saying that 99% of the DNA is what he considers junk DNA.
It is non-coding.
Interesting.
Non-coding.
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 And by non-coding, do you mean like not the like protein coding regions?
It doesn't code for proteins.
Exactly. It doesn't code for proteins.
What about like regulatory stuff?
That's a good question. I don't know. Wesley, it sounds like you might have a little bit of scientific background.
Just hobby.
Ems, what do you think about that? Does it have any regulatory function?
Some of it does, yes. Like some of it would regulate transcription, and some of it would act as inhibitors of transcriptors, activators or initiators of transcription. Some of them would act as telomeres, for example. But the vast majority of it is non-functional.
Okay. He's saying some of it, yes, does what you're referring to, but the vast majority of it is non-functional. I do think we can hone in on something that we can all agree on as non-functional. So rather than debating the percentage, I think we all agree for the most part. It's not always true. There are functional endogenous retroviruses, but for the most part, endogenous retroviruses are like, we're going to call them more like parasites. They found their way into our DNA. They spliced into the DNA, but typically we don't need them. You can cut all of them out typically, and they wouldn't have an effect. Now, we have discovered there are some retroviruses that we do actually need. Like we've adapted over the course of evolution in unison with the retroviruses, and now they're actually necessary, but most of them aren't necessary. And
right. If I remember correctly, I think some ARVs are antiviral, and then maybe some are like embryonic development that can be useful. Yeah.
So my point with the ERVs is I think ERVs are a really good sign of evolution, but you already agree with evolution. So we have something there that we agree on, that ERVs make a lot of sense in a world where evolution happens to be the case. So perhaps the next question I would move to, right? If you and I both agree that ERVs exist and that they're good evidence for evolution, and you and I both agree that evolution is true, right? The question I would ask is, at what point did humans become human? Like, so when God put his image in mankind, that's your doctrine. I don't think that's what image means, but that's typically the Christian doctrine. At what point did that happen?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Also, Wesley, by the way, take your time answering the questions. So far, you've been the most delightful guest I've talked to in weeks. So when I get good guests, you have all the time you need. Don't worry. Okay.
I have what I'm inclined to do is go based on a general outlook of genealogies, and maybe like think like 10,000 years, somewhere around there, for like humans at least, or like man in God's image kind of thing.
Sure. So you would then kind of you would adopt evolution, but then you would also marry in the idea of like the 6,000 years, where about 6,000 years ago you got the first man and woman with the image of God in them.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, fair enough. That's a popular theory. If you've read anything from like Biologos or Reasons to Believe, you'll hear that.
William Lane Craig, yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so you're familiar with the organizations I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. I think Biologos is doing really cool stuff. I think they're pushing the boundaries of apologetics. Like if you're ever looking for a good apologetic institute, I would go to Biologos. I actually personally have 2 professors that are part of the organization when I was in school, and they're really smart people.
Nice. That's good.
So that being said, you're already familiar with some of the organizations doing apologetics that are agreeing with the science. So I'm going to bring up something that I brought up with one of my professors who was in
Okay.
Biologos, and I'm not going to name drop who he is because I don't want people to go and attack his work because he does amazing work. But one of my concerns is that say you have the evolution of man, right? How did God decide? Like, what did Adam and Eve have? If we just refer to Adam and Eve as the first people to get the image,
Sure.
what were the qualities of Adam and Eve that their parents lacked?
I've thought about that. I think it's sort of like a consciousness, maybe like morality and rationality.
Yeah, that's actually a really good. It's a really good thought. You can say like they finally reached a point where they were mentally developed, but I would say that kind of betrays Genesis 3 because according to Genesis 3, they didn't know right from wrong yet until they ate from the fruit. That's Genesis 3:22.
That's fair. I'd have to think about that.
Right. Now I'll give you. I think the answer I think that best works.
Okay.
So I think I was in a chat forum with some friends on this topic, and someone said it wasn't that they were developed mentally enough, is that they were developed physically enough that they could, in fact, embody the characteristics that God wanted them to embody. Right. So God knew it's kind of like when you're building a custom motorcycle, even before
Okay.
the motorcycle is completely finished, you recognize that there's a point where you could get on that motorcycle and test drive it.
Yeah.
Right. So
Okay.
to me, I think that's the argument that makes the most sense. Like God went through the process of evolution to develop human beings to get them to a point where they were physically and mentally capable of handling the download, if you will.
Hmm. Yeah, I could see.
Now,
Maybe
sorry, go
what I
ahead.
would do is
Mhm.
separate like rationality and like moral law, like knowledge of moral law.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, I have to tell you why I don't think this is a great a great argument.
Okay. Yeah, go for it.
So, the process of using evolution to get to the stage, right? The problem with that is we're assuming that God had one of two options, at least one of two options. So he probably had other options, right? So, but let's use the two options we know of.
Okay.
Option number one is God used evolution. Option number two that God could have done is he could have just spoke Adam and Eve into existence at the moment and not used evolution. Those are two options he could have used. Now, the reason why this is important is because the option, if you believe he used evolution, that means he seemed to have picked the most barbaric method possible of getting where he wanted to go when he could have just clicked his fingers and got there without all the barbarism. Like he didn't need the millions of years of humans like hunting and preying on each other and dying in the wild and like survival of the fittest and nonsense like that.
I mean, yeah. Um, I think I'm sort of granting that God is sort of omniscient and like predetermines everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I view sort of suffering and everything like that from a perspective of it's all part of like sort of the overarching narrative.
Yeah, yeah. So for example, do you believe in the triomni God? Like he's all good, he's all knowing, and he's all powerful?
Yeah,
Okay.
roughly.
Sure. So this does run into the omni paradox a little bit, which is if he's all good, then it seems to be that he's required, because that's part of the definition of all good, he's required to take the path with the least amount of suffering, right?
For what?
Well,
That's
to
what I.
accomplish his goal, right? If his goal is X, Y, and
Sure,
Z,
sure. I grant that.
right. So we're assuming that the goal is whatever the goal is. We don't know what it is,
Sure.
right? But if he has a goal, like if his goal is to make mankind capable of taking the divine image, then if he's all good, then we would assume that part of being all good means that he's doing it the way that causes only necessary suffering and not unnecessary suffering. Kind of like if you
Yeah.
go in to get like your vaccine, right? The needle is necessary. You have to suffer through the needle. But if the
Sure.
doctor comes in, pokes you in the eyeball, and then gives you the vaccine, well, the poke in the eyeball was not necessary. He didn't need that.
Yeah. I think maybe I'm being presumptuous. I think I could figure out where you're going with this.
Mhm.
So my prediction is, and maybe I'm wrong, so you can correct me, but what I'm seeing is because God is, so he's all powerful, right? And an all powerful God, I mean, apart from the fact that an all powerful God wouldn't need to use the means of evolution, right?
Right.
I think, I mean, you can go even further than that. Like, do you know Alex O'Connor?
Yeah, I know. Cosmic skeptic.
Yeah.
He's
So
way smarter than I
has
am.
he has the like gratuitous suffering of like animals and that kind of thing.
I love that argument. I don't use it, but I love it.
Hmm. I think it's a good argument.
Mhm. I think I've listened to him before. I think I could support his argument from the Bible and make it even better, but we don't know each other yet, unfortunately.
Interesting. Okay.
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. I got excited.
Yeah, he's an incredible thinker. I think I forget how old he is. I think he's like my age,
Yeah, he's
like
young.
26.
Yeah, I'm a boomer, dude.
Um. Well, I I don't know. I see the thrust of like moral arguments. The the overarching problem though that I have with them is that it's from my perspective, it feels like it's trying to smuggle in sort of like an objective morality.
Well, let me rebut that by suggesting that I don't think this is a moral argument. To me, I think it's a definitional argument, right? So when we're
Okay.
talking about the omni paradox, and I'm touching on the part of the paradox of God being omnibenevolent, meaning all good,
Hmm.
then we can just agree on what all good means without having to worry about morality.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I would suggest that in my worldview, and we can discuss this a little bit, all good means that you don't cause unnecessary suffering, you only cause necessary suffering.
Right. Okay.
Because if you're all good, you pick
Well,
the
it wouldn't
best
exist if you were
possible.
all good.
What's that, Ems?
Yeah, I don't think necessary pain would exist if you're all powerful.
Actually, so that's a fair point from Ems. So you can't hear Ems, but Ems is saying it. If there was a God that was all good, there wouldn't be any unnecessary pain at all.
All powerful.
Right.
Yeah, he wouldn't make it necessary.
Yeah. I think maybe there's some like semantic things that I could go down, but
Well,
generally, yeah.
let me push the argument a little even more, right? Since we're talking
Okay.
about the idea of necessary and unnecessary evil, because it seems like God, the ideal state would be no more suffering, no more sorrow, no more pain, no more death. That's Revelation 21, 7 and 8,
Mhm.
right? Now, if that's the ideal state, then I think that at a minimum, that means that suffering is always going to be less beneficial than non-suffering.
Yeah. Hmm.
Right. So if God's all powerful and he can instantiate any world, including the world from Revelation 21, where there is no suffering, there's no sorrow, but he instantiated the world where there's a lot of gratuitous suffering via evolution or via the food chain or via natural
Sure.
disasters. I think we have to do one of two things. We either have to get rid of one of the omni properties, or we have to just say that God is illogical. Now, I have a Christian friend on TikTok named Vor. The way he
Okay.
fixes this is by saying that, well, God's not all good. Sometimes he's an asshole. And that's a possibility.
Um, I don't know if I don't know, have you read any like C.S. Lewis?
So I read C.S. Lewis back when I was in high school. And I read Mere Christianity because everyone was saying how smart he was. I personally did not find C.S. Lewis compelling. Uh,
That's fair.
I think there are a lot of good theologians in history that did it better. I would point towards people like Thomas Aquinas.
Oh, I'd agree about that. Yeah.
I think he's way better than C.S. Lewis could ever hope to be. Um,
Yeah.
so,
Summa Theologia. Yeah.
and even
Yes.
even modern thinkers, think of somebody like Fyodor Dostoevsky. Oh, great book, right? So if you're
Yeah.
looking at Dostoevsky, I mean, if you're just looking at like some of the basic works, like his magnum opus, The Brothers Karamazov, I think that's better.
Karamazov.
That's
Yeah.
better than most of the theological works out there. He addresses a lot of these points.
Yeah. He's got that interesting what is it, the oh gosh, so that one scene when I'm trying to remember the brothers' names.
Oh, there's
It's I
Iosha.
yeah, Ayosha is the youngest, right? And
Hmm.
then uh
Shit. What?
the you know the atheist one, the middle one.
Yeah, I always forget their names. I have a
Hmm.
bookmark. So the original copy that I bought on Amazon, and they
Yeah.
actually sent me a bookmark that had all the names of the characters in it. So you didn't
Oh, that's
forget.
handy.
Isn't that awesome?
Let me see if
Because they jump back and forth between the characters so often that it's easy to forget who they are.
yeah, that's a Russian novel for you. I don't think I have it close to me, so that's okay.
I can pull it up. Hold on, let me grab the characters. So there's Alyosha, and
Dmitri
Dimitri.
is oldest.
Yes, Dimitri's there, and
He's the
Ivan.
one that gets accused.
Right. And of course, everyone remembers Katerina, and
Yeah.
Ilyusha is obviously another, and Fyodor.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, Either way, listen. Sorry, we were getting off track.
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna bring up the one discussion that they have in the diner before the atheist brother leaves, where he's sort of like going over his sort of uh inquisitor, like king dream. Are you familiar with that part?
I mean, you can refresh my memory a little bit. It's been
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
so I read it for the last time in, give me a second, 2009. I'm sorry, I've told you I'm old.
There's a, you probably remember when I start saying it, but basically Jesus comes to this town, and the head inquisitor like speaks with him, and he's like like we have this sort of thing going on here, and we need you to leave.
Right.
Yeah. So I think there's a particular perspective about suffering that like it's all bad.
Right. So I don't agree with that, by the way. So
Okay.
I think some suffering is necessary.
Okay.
Okay. So when I talk about unnecessary or gratuitous suffering, I use pretty specific examples because I think there is such a thing as unnecessary suffering. So I'm okay with that. For example, I go to the gym and I tear my muscles and it's painful. I get micro tears in my muscle, but I get stronger, right? So I think
Sure.
there is such a thing as unnecessary suffering or necessary suffering. But for me, right, if I think there's an all good, all loving, all powerful God, I would expect, my expectation is that there's not unnecessary suffering, right? If there is unnecessary suffering, that means one of the omni properties of God has to go. Either he doesn't know about it, or he can't do anything about it, or or he's just not good. He's not all good. He's only partially good.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think, this is a fair argument, right? It's a very old argument.
It's a classic. Like
Yeah.
it's got the staying power because it's a
Mhm.
good one,
It is. Yeah.
right?
I don't want to be trite and be like, this is a mystery, but I think to a certain extent there are, I believe that there are mysteries, and some of the things that from my perspective, I believe God knows.
So
I'm fine with temporarily not.
I don't think that's trite. I think that's being honest. Okay, so for example, when I was a Christian, I knew that the Trinity broke the laws of logic. I knew it. There was no question about it, right?
Hmm.
And as a Christian, I was willing to say that, listen, it's illogical. It's a mystery. We can't understand it. God is beyond our understanding. I think that's an okay place to be. I think when you get to the point where you're saying, no, the logic of the Trinity does make sense, it is logical. That's where Christians get themselves into deep water because I can demonstrate to you why it's not logical, right? So there is a point where if you get to a point where you say, listen, my religion is a faith. I can't demonstrate it to be true. I can't even demonstrate it necessarily to always be logical, but I believe it because I'm convicted of it. Right.
Hmm.
Now, that's a point of honesty. I can respect that, right? I was there once. I was at a point where I said, listen, I can't tell you it's true. I can't tell you it's even logical. I can tell you that I believe it.
Sure.
But you know as well as I do, people come into this live stream and they'll tell me I'm the idiot for not believing what they believe.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's clearly not true, but I think, yeah. I think, yeah, I have a little bit of a qualm with just like the level of like positivism, objectivism
Mhm.
in Western culture. I don't think life is that simple.
Wesley, have you gone to school?
Yeah, I went to Gutenberg College.
Mhm.
It's a liberal arts.
That's fine. Are you considering a master's degree?
Yeah.
Have you considered doing a master's degree in biblical studies?
No, not really.
Well, I think you would enjoy it. Now, you can't make any money with it. Like I paid out of pocket for mine, and I made no
Sure.
money with it.
Okay.
But I think you would really enjoy it.
Hmm.
You're smart and you're thoughtful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Well, let me go to the other end, right? So we started at, is there a good reason for God?
Mhm.
I'll give you some brief synopsis on why, even if there is a God, I don't think it's a Christian God. Because
Okay.
at the end of the day, like, you might be able to lay down an argument for God existing that convinces me. I might be like, fuck, there is a God. But I don't think the Christian God is that God ever, no matter what.
Okay.
And
Interesting.
I think the reason why that's the case is because I don't think the triomni God makes sense. So number one, triomni God out the window. Number two, the Bible is riddled with problems. I think the biggest problem for me, and everyone here who knows my channel knows what I'm going to say. You already know what's happening, guys. I don't think Jesus fulfilled a single messianic prophecy, right?
Interesting. Yeah, no, I understand where that's coming from. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So now I know that Christians really think, like, when I say this, they get like really like deep down inside, like, he has to have done at least one. What about Isaiah 53? Not even Isaiah 53, right? So like when I get this, so I went to, I'll give you a preface, Wesley. I went to Bible college and
Mhm.
seminary, and
Okay.
at both I specialized in the Hebrew Bible and Semitic languages. So when I'm looking at the Bible, I'm looking at this thing like, fuck, Jesus didn't do it. He didn't do what he was supposed to do. That's just all there is to it, right? Now,
Mhm.
when I say this to Christians, they get crazy. They get out in their head like, that can't be true. But the fact of the matter is, I've never seen a Christian give a good rational defense for why I'm wrong. Because if you just read the prophecies, even the ones that he claimed to fulfill, Micah 5:2, Zechariah 9:9, so on and so forth, he didn't fulfill them. He didn't do them.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is you even have it's near the beginning of Matthew, I think, where he's like, thus fulfilling prophecy,
Right. He says
And
it.
then you look back, and when you look back, you're like, that's not even a prophecy.
I
What
know.
are you
It's
talking
not
about?
even a prophecy. I know. It's like, what are you talking about? It's not even a prophecy.
I'm wondering if that's, and maybe I'm speculating now, but I'm wondering if, because there's such a rich Jewish tradition that they had, I'm wondering if there was some sort of other meaning to something being a prophecy.
Okay. So I'll give you the background. Okay. So,
Okay.
when the prophecies originally of the post-Babylonian Reformation didn't happen, the writers of the intertestamental period started reinterpreting the passages, and I've got a copy. Hold on. Okay. It was a copy of the Dead Sea Scrolls. What we found in Dead Sea Scrolls and elsewhere is the problem we found is that, like, when the prophecies didn't come true, rather than just admitting they didn't come true, they said, no, 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 no. The prophecy didn't mean what it originally was talking about. It actually means this, right? I'll give you my favorite example. It comes from the Dead Sea Scrolls, the commentary on Hosea. Let me make sure this is the one I was looking for. No, not Hosea. It must be the commentary on maybe Habakkuk. There we go, Habakkuk. So if you go to the Dead Sea Scrolls, look at the commentary on Habakkuk, it says something really interesting. At the beginning of Habakkuk 1:6, it quotes it. It says, "For I am now about to raise up the Chaldeans, a brutal and reckless people." Easy enough. We know who the Chaldeans are, right? Those Babylonians.
Yeah.
And then it says, it gives an interpretation of this passage. And it says, this refers to the Katim, who are swift and mighty in war, annihilating many people, so on and so forth. But the Kettim at this time period was a reference for either the Greeks or the Romans. So what the author of the Habakkuk Pesher was doing was he's saying, listen, the prophecy as it originally was given didn't come true. Therefore, it must be about somebody else. And this is what the New Testament is doing. The New Testament keeps going back to the Old Testament saying, well, the Old Testament prophecies didn't come true. Therefore, it must come true in this other way, right? Where I think the more parsimonious answer is it didn't come true because they're not real prophecies because the God of this book doesn't exist.
Yeah, I take your point. What I would say though is like, maybe you can, let's just try a couple examples. I'll just start with one. Let's say maybe you could see when Jesus says, I will destroy this temple and in 3 days I'll rise it up, right? For instance, like you could see how that could be interpreted one way by the contemporary Pharisees, and then later it's understood by the disciples in a different way, right?
Okay, so on the example you gave, I don't think that's comparable. For example,
one thing I'll grant, it's not a prophecy in the sense that like we can see the fulfillment and like demonstrate it, right?
Oh, well, I think the
I'm
reason.
just saying. Okay.
Fair enough. I think the reason why I would count that as disconnected is because it seems clear from the context that Jesus was talking about himself. That being said, the one I'm referring to are the prophecies of the Old Testament, right? Referring to things that we know are real entities. So, for example, when it talks about the Israelites being gathered up from the nations in which they were scattered, they'll all be brought home, the northern and the southern tribes. This is Ezekiel 36 and 37. They'll be combined again into one nation. Never again will they be divided into two nations, right? This is a very clear prophecy about God collecting his people, bringing them back and combining them back into one nation like the divided or the united monarchy. This just didn't happen, right? So, and if you read the writings of the Jews from the intertestamental time period, they know it didn't happen, right? So in order to get around the fact that it didn't happen, they had to invent new interpretations. We'll say, well, this word means this now. This people group means this people group, right? And so to me, that's just them saying, listen, it didn't come true, so the words don't mean what words mean anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I'm just thinking about like, yeah, I'd have to look at that. Maybe I'll get back to you at some point.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So my reading of the New Testament is that they were continuing the tradition. This tradition that, well, the original prophecies didn't come true in the original context. But if you change the meaning of the words, you can make it come true another way. And so Christians will tell me, well, it came true spiritually. That doesn't mean anything to me. What does a spiritual fulfillment even mean, right? Because once you've divorced it from the original context, well, it can be about anything. And to...
Sorry, just to like try to guess where they're coming from. Do they think that this is talking about like the new Israel, like God's people?
So that brings up a good point, because they were reinterpreting the old prophecies, and one of those is the new Israel, new Jerusalem, new heaven, new earth, right? So we hear about this quite often in the Bible. This is kind of, I want to call a reworking of Isaiah 65. Now, the crazy part is in Isaiah 65, when it talks about the new heaven, new earth, new Jerusalem, it says that people are still going to die. They're just going to live for a long time. It says the person who lives to 100 will be considered a youth. Sorry, the person who dies at 100 will be considered a youth, right? Though so in Isaiah, it's suggesting that people are going to live for a long time, but not going to live forever. But Revelation 21:7 and 21:8 says that there will be no more death in the New Jerusalem at all, none.
Interesting.
Right. There's a lot there. Wesley, listen, it's 7:30. I'm supposed to be out of here by 12 o'clock. 7:30, 12:30, sorry. I'm supposed to be out of here by 12 o'clock. It's 12:30 now. My brain's starting to turn to mush. But listen, Wesley, you're delightful. You're the type of person that I want to have conversations with. So please do come back.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Because it might be that we never agree on anything, but it's also true that you're a decent person.
Thanks.
So we appreciate being here. We get a lot of people come up here and they're belligerent, they're angry, they're upset, and they just they feel like they want to one up the atheist. And when I first got online, I never thought that would be what I'm doing. I thought I would be having conversations with people like you. I thought I'd be having meaningful conversations with good people. Because when I was in church with really good people. We had conversations like this.
But you're on the internet.
I know. Now I'm on the internet, and it's not the same.
It's a different ballgame.
So when we find nice people like you, Wesley, please come back soon.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Wesley, thank you so much. And if you ever want someone to talk to, join the Discord. We have a lot of people that are talking about these topics, deconstructing in the Discord. Some of them are full-blown atheists like me. Some of them still believe.
Okay, cool.
All right, cheers, friend.